버니 씨가 소개해드리는 진짜 미국 주식 이야기. 오늘 소개해드릴 종목은 빌닷컴입니다. 이 중소기업의 백오피스 재무 운영을 자동화하는 클라우드 기반의 소프트웨어를 제공해주는 업체인데 우리나라에서는 찾아볼 수가 없는 빌닷컴에 대한 진짜 현지 이야기들 오늘 버니 씨가 소개해드릴 예정입니다. 끝까지 채널 고정 부탁드리겠고요. 본격적으로 주식 이야기 관련해서 나눠보기 전에 이 시장에 대한 영향들 먼저 체크해 보도록 하겠습니다. 현재 시장에 미치는 요인들 중에 가장 큰 영향을 주는 요인이 어떤 것일지 지금 바로 들어보시죠.
Yes, I think there is right now. So one thing we want to think about, we've had a really great stock market rally this year, and I do believe the stock market rally is going to continue on through the end of the year. But we have to think about how this market has gone and which stocks have led the rally. So one thing that I look at and I pay attention to is stocks that advance versus stocks that decline. So we did a little analysis of the stocks that are advancing, okay, and I took a look at the Nasdaq 100, the top 100 stocks in Nasdaq. And I took a look at all those stocks that are going up. We took all that advancing volume, put it over here, and the stocks that are going down, we took all that declining volume and put it over here, and I subtracted the declining volume from the advancing volume. If the market's going higher, we should see more advancing volume than declining volume. And if we look at this chart that I have right here, oops, hang on. If we look at this chart that I have right here, we can see that the market has gone higher. This is the Nasdaq 100, and the advancing volume is bigger than the declining volume because the line on the bottom continues to go higher. Mm-hmm. But now let's go look at a larger percentage of the stock, larger amount of the stocks. Let's look at the Nasdaq Composite. That's not just the top 100, but that's 2,500 stocks. Okay, and now what we can see is we have a couple of instances here on this chart where the Nasdaq Composite's advancing volume was less than the declining volume. So you can see I put those arrows down where the line starts going down, where we got less advancing volume than declining volume. And on this last move up, that has become fairly significant. So what's going on is the Nasdaq 100 is pulling up the rest of the market. A healthy market needs everything to go up, not just the best stocks, because the best stocks can only go so far. Let's look at things in another way. Let's look at the advanced declines. Let's look at the new 52-week highs versus the new 52-week lows. So if a stock's making a new 52-week high today, we'll note it. If the stock's making a new 52-week low today, we'll note it. If the market's rallying substantially, we should be making more new 52-week highs than 52-week lows. I've made a box over here at the last few weeks that shows that we are making more new 52-week highs versus 52-week lows in the Nasdaq 100. We're making anywhere between 5 and 20 new highs versus new lows per day for the last month. But now let's do the same thing we did with the Nasdaq Composite. Let's look at what's going on here in the Nasdaq Composite. Yes, still the market's going higher, no doubt about it. But look at what's going on. We're now making more new 52-week lows than we're making new 52-week highs while we're on the top of the market. We need to make sure that the market cleanses itself a little bit, let's say, where in other words, it becomes healthy again. It may take 3 weeks, it may take 6 weeks. The big stocks can still go higher, but we need the smaller stocks to become more healthy and start to stop making new lows. And I think that's a little bit right now of something that we need to watch. So my thought is for this summer, for the mid portion of the summer, we may chop around a little bit. We may even go down a little. But if we go down, that gives us the chance to buy more stocks at more attractive prices. because I still believe that as we go through the rest of the year, because of our opinion on earnings strength, that we're going to be able to do better. Goldman Sachs put out a commentary in May that they believed that they had 500 billion of liquid assets that were going to go and be invested into the market before the end of the year. That's a fairly significant amount of money. So we've got that going on. We've got earnings growth going on. And we just need like the pause that refreshes for some of these smaller price stocks. So that's something I'm watching right now.
네, 정말 국내에서는 찾아보기 힘든 현지에서의 미국 상황들을 자세하게 짚어드렸습니다. 자, 이제부터는 최근에 상승세를 타고 있는 미국의 중소기업들 살펴보도록 할 텐데 오늘 소개해드릴 종목 바로 들어보시죠.
Okay, so there's a company called Bill.com. It's about a 10-year-old company, but it came public at the end of 2019. It is a cloud software company. What it does is it automates the back office functions for companies, small to medium-sized companies. It does it through their accounts payable and accounts receivable. It uses artificial intelligence to do this. So it takes scans of invoices, okay, and payments that need to be made in bills, and decides what the numbers are. It feeds it in and it learns because it keeps doing this, and it automates your accounts payable and accounts receivable. Its goal is to cut your accounts payable time that you have to, like, you get all the bills in and you have a small to medium-sized company, you have to pay out your bills. It wants to cut the processing time in half. It also wants to take your accounts receivable and be able to allow you to receive the monies that you're owed from other companies twice as fast as you're doing it manually. So it's a subscription-based company, so it's repeatable, but it's not very expensive. It's $39 a month, okay? But it's repeatable business. Well, $39 a month is great, but when you have growth that they're already a $15 billion market capitalized company. So that's a fairly significant thing. They've had phenomenal growth, and they've increased their customers from 70,000 last year and 30,000 the year before to over 100,000 this year. So they're really growing fast. I think it's a really interesting company.
네, 빌닷컴에 대해서 어떤 회사인지 짧게 소개 들어봤습니다. 그렇다면 지금부터 이 투자를 할 만한 기업인지 버니 씨의 포인트 오브 뷰로 한번 들어보도록 하겠습니다.
Jessica, I think this is a great stock to monitor. Okay, their IPO we talked about just started in 2019. Okay, there are only a few analysts that are following the stock. There's about 6 analysts. Goldman Sachs is one of the analysts, and they just started following the stock in June of this year. But there are several really astute large investors that have significant positions in this stock currently. So that's something we really, that's a positive for this stock. If we look at where the stock has gone since it came public, the stock's up 433%. Okay, the Nasdaq since that same time is only up 46%. 46 is still great for 2 years, but 433%. This year alone, the stock's up 34% for the first 6 months of this year, while the Nasdaq stocks are up about 12.5%. So when I look at this company, I can see that this stock has done very well, and it's done very well lately. If I look at a comparison of Bill.com to the Nasdaq index, putting them both on the same chart, you can see the difference of how far Bill.com has gone relative to the Nasdaq. And the Nasdaq has done great, and stocks are at new highs. The blue line at the bottom of the chart is Nasdaq, and the black line is Bill.com. Now, if you jump one more, if I look at just this year, you can see in May of this year where Bill.com went down to where the Nasdaq is. So this chart right now just looks at performance of both the Nasdaq and Bill.com for this year's only. And we had a little bit of a decline in software stocks from late April to mid-May. And Bill.com went down a little bit, you can see, and that was an opportunity to buy because it's gone up significantly from there. So this is just a way to analyze and show how Bill.com has performed relative to the Nasdaq.
네, 나스닥이 12% 오르는 동안 빌닷컴은 무려 34%나 상승했다고 합니다. 그만큼 앞으로 더 성장성이 강한 종목이라고 볼 수가 있겠는데 그렇다면 언제 매수를 하면 좋을지 매수 시점과 매수가까지 한번 여쭤보도록 하겠습니다.
Okay, so like everything I ever think about, I want to put a stock into a portfolio that not only does well, but I want the market to do well, and I want the stock to do better than the market. So I've got an outperforming stock. So let's think about Bill.com in comparison to other cloud computing companies. So we'll take an exchange traded fund, they're called ETFs, okay? And that ETF, that fund, will own only cloud computing companies, okay? So if I look at the price of Bill.com and I divide it by the price of SKYY, Sky, which is the cloud computing exchange traded fund, I'll see that through the course of this last period here, Bill.com has outperformed other cloud computing stocks. So that's great. But the red line is a 20-week moving average on a weekly chart. So you can see there are times when Bill.com comes back down to the cloud computing company's returns, okay? And it gives you a chance to be able to buy the stock. If we look at not only cloud computing companies, but software technology stocks. So we'll take an exchange traded fund that only owns software technology stocks. And we want to do the same thing. We want to look at how Bill.com has done relative to software technology stocks. And this chart shows the same thing. Bill.com continues to outperform other software technology stocks. So now let's think about it from the perspective of the market as a whole. So let's look at it also from the Nasdaq, okay? How is Bill.com doing versus the Nasdaq? And we can see here, the line continues to go higher. Bill.com has been outperforming the Nasdaq. This is a great thing where we've got Bill.com outperforming its competition and Bill.com outperforming the market in general. That's a stock we want to own.
네, 빌닷컴은 이 클라우드 서비스를 기반해서 회계사가 하는 일들을 도와주는 기업이다. 이런 설명들을 좀 들었고 그에 대해서 매수하기도 좋은 시점이라고 언급을 해주셨는데 이 AI의 기술로 인해서 앞으로 회계사들의 입지가 좁아질 것이다라는 평가가 시장에서는 지배적입니다. 앞으로 이 빌닷컴이 어떤 성장성 가지고 있는지도 체크해 주시죠.
I think Bill.com could grow to 10 times the size that it currently has right now. I think the space, the whole space, if we think about the space, it's a $30 billion total addressable market space. So that means the market that Bill.com operates in is $30 billion potentially. Well, their revenues this year are forecasted to be about $207 million. A year ago, they were $160 million. A year before that, they were 130. So their revenues are growing. In 2018, they were $68 million. So they're really growing. As a former CPA, okay, who audited companies and had to look at people's companies' accounts payable and accounts receivables, 80%, over 80% of small to medium-sized companies still issue manual paper checks as opposed to electronic payment. So this space has potential to grow a ton. There's so many efficiencies that Bill.com helps with, and it doesn't cost very much money. Then the second thing is, okay, so they have 100,000 customers, but they have 2.5 million people within their network. Because let's say you're a customer and you need to pay 10 different vendors, okay? Well, Bill.com has to set up with those 10 different vendors. So not only do they have you as a customer, but they have connections to those 10 different vendors. And the same thing for receivables. They have 2.5 million connections already. Now, the more you put in information into artificial intelligence, the better the artificial intelligence gets. Bill.com is so far ahead of everybody else in its space that I think it's going to continue to grow and not get caught by another company. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity.
네, 그렇다면 빌닷컴에 대한 투자 포인트도 안 들어볼 수 없겠죠? 지금 바로 들어볼게요.
Cloud software companies go, it's got a great niche in the market. Okay, I think it outperforms its competition. Its total addressable market is so much bigger than it is already. And one thing we haven't talked about yet, the company still has not made money yet, but it's really close. I think they only lost about $20 million this year. And that's on a market capitalization of 15 billion. So as 2023 comes along, I think that company's going to be making a lot of money. And the thing about it is, when you have artificial intelligence, once you've built the base and then your revenues grow, it all goes to the bottom line. Your gross margins are great. So that's my summary on Bill.com.